Hello and welcome to episode 89 of the WP Café show. I'm your host, Keith Devon, with my co-host, Mark Wilkinson. And as always, we'll be talking about WordPress development and business. Thank you for joining us today. If you're on YouTube, live with us on YouTube, please do say hello in the comments. Let us know who you are, where you're from. It's always nice to chat. If you're listening along on the podcast, you can do that on your favorite podcast player. Just look for WP Café. And we're on Twitter as well, at WP Café Show. So you can find us in all those places. We'd love to hear from you and say hello. Mark, how are you doing this week?
Yeah, all good this week. Not a bad week at all.
What's been going on?
This and that. Nothing really massive. Nothing really meaty.
Yeah.
Got a bit further with these proposals that we talked about last week, or certainly one of them that looks promising. Not over the line by any means, but looks promising. Had some further discussions with the client, which is good. I don't know what I've been doing this week. I've been doing a bit more on the WordPress builds, a few bits and bobs for our product job relay, new integrations, bit of support here and there. And yesterday I got stuck into adding a case study section for one of our existing clients. So I kind of did my bit and passed it over to you. You've been working on that today, I think, haven't you? So
yeah,
nice to get a little project going. Yeah, good. What about you?
And I think that's going to be one of the topics for later. So the kind of decision making around how we implemented the case studies section of the website, because more and more we're kind of trying to decide, should we be using post types, custom post types? Should we be using patterns? Like what's the best way to manage this stuff in WordPress these days? Because things are changing. So we're trying to just work out how to make those decisions going forward. But we can talk about that in a bit. Yeah, I'm good. Bits and pieces to do. It was nice to do a little bit of front end work on that stuff. Get into some CSS on an old project. Well, it's old now. It's like 4 years old or something. It is a block editor project, but it was pre full site editing and kind of writing CSS in a much more traditional way, which I really enjoy. So I don't need to worry about writing stuff in JSON or individual block CSS files. It's all beautiful and nicely compiled and using Sass and the good old days, eh? But yeah, so it's been good. It's been a good week. It's been a good week. Hello to a few people in the comments. Tim, hello, lovely to have you along. Always Open Design saying finally able to catch the show live. Emily, hello Emily from Chicago. That's so cool, isn't it? Someone from Chicago tuning in. And Courtney, thank you for saying hi in the comments. So let's get stuck in. The first topic on our list today is what is a WordPress theme in the modern WordPress setup, i.e. using full site editing. So I guess the question is, how have themes changed? What is a theme today? What should a theme do for you? What are your thoughts on that, Mark?
So I think to start with, answer about what was a theme before full site editing and full site editing really. The block editor didn't really influence that too much, but what was a theme? And I think for me, a theme was something that provided all of the layouts for WordPress's templates. By templates, I mean home, page, post, category archive, etc. Maybe some custom templates as well. And then it obviously styled those. And so why has that changed? Well, a theme can still do that, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a full site editing theme can still do that. It can still provide the layouts for those pages, albeit they will be very done differently. So it will all be like HTML markup in there rather than PHP. And it can still style them. So I think it can style those pages probably in a different way again. It might be in theme JSON. It might be using block styles. It might be using block variations. I don't know, whatever it might provide, but it would still do that. I think the difference is, and where I sort of asked the question, what is actually a WordPress theme, is because the user in the interface can now make all those decisions for themselves, where in the past they couldn't necessarily make all those decisions for themselves, or they could certainly make a lot less of those decisions for themselves. Some themes would introduce settings into the customizer to allow you to change maybe like key colors and things like that. But now the approach, or certainly the goal, I don't think we're quite there yet, but is that you can change all of that inside of the full site editing experience. You can change the global styles, you can change the block styles, you could change the fonts, you could change the spacing rules, you can change that all at a block level, you can change it at a global level. So if we can do all that within in WordPress, what is a theme anymore? What does it actually give us? It's just an open question. I think. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, in some ways, I don't think it's really changed. A theme is about the kind of look and feel of a website rather than the content and functionality of a website. So I don't think it's kind of changed. What's interesting to me is that I'm pretty sure towards the start of the Gutenberg project, we were kind of told that themes were dead. Like, we don't need themes anymore because you're going to be able to do everything in the editor. And I'm thinking, that doesn't mean we don't need themes anymore, because the vast majority of people that install WordPress, I'm assuming, are kind of DIYers, and they don't necessarily want to create a design system from scratch. They don't want to have to think about color combinations that work, typographic treatments that work well. They don't know what line height is, never mind what it should be set to. So for me, themes should take care of that stuff. It's about creating a coherent design, coherent, consistent design of some kind. And so what I think's changed is how that is implemented. So previously, there'd be lots of templates, like you said. And they'd be PHP files or HTML or whatever, bundled with the theme for various cases. Like a category archive looks like this, and a taxonomy archive looks like that, and a about page template maybe looks different in a single post and a single page, and they all have their different templates. Themes can still do that, but it's just done differently. So a theme author can create all those templates within the site editor and bundle them up as part of their theme. The difference now is that once you get those on your site, everything is editable. So that can all be changed. So for me, there's always going to be a need for theming, because not everyone has a designer stroke developer on hand to do this stuff for them. I mean, it's always been that way with WordPress. Yep. I think one of WordPress's greatest successes was the theme marketplace, and how you take the same kind of product and make it look like anything you wanted it to look like. And almost instantly you can have a good looking website. And I think that hasn't changed. So
There's a few people's coming to comments here. So Sam says, "Thank you, Sam. I thought Matt, I presume you mean Matt Mullenweg, teased themes had no future in his last state of the word. Since then, we've just had updates from theme authors, for example, theme styles." Their point. Elliot mentions a good point, which I've just suddenly not thought about. I believe only the admin can change things in the site editor. I would assume so, like an admin user. I've never actually thought about what the different users can and can't do in the site editor. That's a very good point. It's interesting. Mark says, I see a theme in future as being the equivalent to a skin. I think this is what I see as well. A preset collection of styles, colors, font faces, maybe spacing rules as well.
But not layouts, like not templates, Mark. I mean, I would argue that that's a critical part of what a theme is, personally. And I get that you can create your own, and I get that you can even, there's pattern libraries and things. I get that you can extend what you're given, but I still think people want something out of the box that looks like a contact page and looks like an about page, looks like a home page. I think that's still going to be a theme thing. I could be wrong. I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
I think you're probably right. Sam also says, I don't know any business websites that want to change their theme styles every week. No, I don't. But I think if you are a small business wanting to build a website, then having the ability to be able to tweak, test, and play about with your theme or your colors or your styles to get going is probably a good thing.
Yeah,
And then Mark goes on to say, if you want to modify them from the presets which the designer has developed and provided, that's the freedom which WordPress allows.
yeah,
So it's very much, here's the starting point of something that we think works well together and is good, but you have the tools to the power to go and make some changes if you want
I
to.
was I was gonna say that's what's new, but actually it's not. It's only new in core. Like lots of themes
Yeah,
have provided like customizer options for brand color one, brand color two, like typography hierarchies and all sorts for ages. So I'd say themes, yeah, themes have kind of always done like a lot of themes have been doing that for a long time.
yeah.
Maybe
Um,
just in a slightly different way.
Elliot makes another point here. So a theme is a ridge style design skin only editable by an admin. If you don't want the client to change things, only add those users as editors. They can only then change design and content. Yeah, I think that's a good way of maybe controlling what they can do. I wouldn't agree that you should create clients and not create them an admin user, though. They maybe shouldn't log in with it, but I think you should always create them an admin user. It's their website. That's just slightly different
Yeah.
off topic.
Yeah.
Always open design, which I think was Emily, went wrong,
Yep.
said patterns also. That's an interesting one. Is a pattern part of a theme? Because a pattern
I think so.
is a layout which could be used across a different theme and skinned differently.
Yeah, but don't
So
you want a design? See, this for me is kind of it's touching on a core, like a kind of critical tension in WordPress right now. Is that there's this kind of idea that there'll be block libraries and pattern libraries, and potentially template libraries. Well, templates are kind of just patterns anyway, but you know that kind of thing, and you'll have a website and you'll just be able to like look at a pattern like, oh, I like that call to action pattern. I'm going to use that on my website, and it should just work. And I just don't see design like that. Like for me, you know, I was doing something for a client this morning, just doing the CSS, the front end for the case study module that we were building, and there was very specific kind of spacing rules and typographic rules in that tiny module that just would not translate to another website. It just wouldn't. Like, you know, they want like a lot of white space in certain places where you wouldn't necessarily just do that by default, but within the context of that design, it really works because there's other elements that use those same kind of treatments. And this idea that we can just start with this kind of blank slate and we've got all these things that we can pull in from all these third parties and it's just going to look great because theme JSON's there and it handles all the. Now, for me, I think that goes a really, really long way. But I think we'll have patterns bundled with themes for quite a while, just because people are trying to creating a nice typographic rule set and a spacing rule set and a color scheme is great and it goes a long way, but it doesn't get you a beautiful website.
No,
you know, you also need the layout, you know, to have a certain style and direction and
well, that
you
got
know,
me
like
thinking that. Sorry, I was going to say patterns are kind of twofold. Patterns are layout, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they are styles. If you export a pattern or you get the styles that you've applied to those blocks as well, don't you?
that this was my point. So say you've created a pattern and it's a, I don't know, like a media text style block, and
Yeah.
the content side of it you've wrapped in a group and you've given that group a rounded like border radius, rounded corners. Well, but my site, everything's like 90-degree corners because we want it to look really sharp.
Yep.
So how does that pattern then work on with that brand? It doesn't. And
Yeah,
like,
so
you know,
pattern-
lots of patterns have these kind of like, well, with negative margins, which we may or may not come to. Lots of these patterns have like negative margins where they kind of overlap elements, and sometimes there's like borders. What thickness is a border on this pattern compared to the thickness of the borders on your site?
I
How
agree.
much
So
is the border radius? Is it a 5-pixel border radius? Is it a 10-pixel border? Does nobody care about this stuff? Like, that's what
So-
themes do for me. They create a system, like a design system. And this is where I just don't think that that's actually going to be possible if we're leaving things like patterns and templates out of a theme.
you make a good point, I think. So if we can't separate styles from patterns or styles and layouts in patterns, then I think you're right. I think they probably do belong in themes because they are specifically styled to a theme. So you wouldn't want to import that pattern into another site unless there's an easy way. Maybe there is an easy way already that says, hey, I love this pattern, I love this layout, but I don't want the styles on it. But then sometimes the styles build the layout, don't they? Like you say, if they overlap things and so forth, it becomes difficult. So maybe you're right. Maybe they are tied to patterns. What does everyone else think? Is patterns theme specific? Are you ever going to want to say, here's my pattern and I want to put it in another theme or take it with me to my new theme or my new
How do
design?
colors work in patterns? So if I've created a pattern and I've generically and I've given it colors,
Yeah.
and I pull that into my theme that has a completely different color structure, because correct me if I'm wrong, but color palettes aren't standardized in terms of like the variables that are used. How does that work?
Good question. Anyone know? Let us know. It can't, surely. Unless like you said, the variable names are the same. Like if WordPress always used like primary, secondary, tertiary color, it could theoretically work, couldn't it? Because it could just replace out the colors for whatever
I could just see
you
a
chose
lot
as your
of
primary.
Frankenstein designs that, you know, this way, where it's just I'll grab a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this thing over here, and it just looks horrific.
Yeah.
But then maybe for smaller, low budget, kind of low impact websites, that's absolutely fine. You know,
Mark says, no, it's not. Sorry, I went with Elliot first. Elliot says, if you copy a pattern into another theme, the global styles of the destination theme will override the incoming pattern.
global styles.
But I thought that a lot of the style rules for a pattern were included in like the block markup in the attributes above it. So surely, if I've made it red, then it would be red, I would have thought.
Well, yeah, because if I've changed the background color of a group to red, how did my global styles know what that background color should be? That doesn't make sense. I get the top level stuff.
Like Mark says, if the naming doesn't match, it doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't. If I don't call mine the same, if I don't have a primary, tertiary, secondary color, then it's not going to work, is it? Don't think.
Have we standardized color in the naming convention of colors yet?
But you can't. So what happens if you want 6 colors? What do you call them then?
--6. You know, like
just a number.
I guess so. Like, I just don't know. I mean, that doesn't really make sense for colors, to be honest, at all. But this is the thing. I don't know. I know Rich Tabor proposed something maybe a year or two ago about standardizing colors, but I don't think it was. I don't think it's been done. Yeah.
It says if the block has a style, then it will be overridden.
And so, what's the point in a pattern if it doesn't have a style?
So the style will be overridden by the theme, or the pattern style overrides the theme trying to style it.
I don't know.
Not sure. I think it's got to be that one, surely.
I'm just trying to work all this stuff out because if we win these projects that we've just pitched for, it's been a while since we built a WordPress site from scratch, and we're just really trying to think about like what are the best ways to do all of these things, like, and it's hard. I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, I've asked a few questions recently about like, should we just be using Elementor? Like, should we be using Bricks? Bricks is the one that came out as a very, very strong recommendation. I don't know if it's just because someone in the Bricks community kind of saw my tweet and then loads of other people jumped on board, but pretty strong recommendation there. But I just don't want to. I don't know. I'm torn between sticking with core and like trying to go as far as we can and just augmenting it where we need to. But I just feel there's so much augmentation that needs to be done.
Yeah. Emily said, isn't this friction between the ideal vision of a completely flexible system and real world use sort of expected?
Mm-hmm.
There will always be a compromise, but patterns are still useful as a component. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I suppose the idea is the balance that we've got the right balance at the moment. Maybe I find it all very confusing to understand, but it's new terminology, so I suppose that's expected, which is fine. And Elliot just confirms the order of how it works. So theme JSON is overridden by global styles, which is then overridden by any block styles. So that's how it works, I think. So presumably, if you import a pattern which has block styles associated with it into another theme, those styles will override the global or the theme JSON styles in the site we've imported it to. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
In which case, it's not really exportable because it's not going to work right. It's not going to look as you expect it to look in your theme. Anyway, right. That is themes, the golden themes, which I'm sure will evolve over time, and maybe we'll end up with an excellent compromise that works for everybody.
From my point of view, themes are still very much necessary. So people are trying to say we don't need themes anymore. I don't think there's a future where you don't need them. Personally, but they're changing. So we'll see.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Right. Next on the list, Keith, is
patterns versus post types. It kind of carries on very neatly from that conversation we were just having. So this was, we needed to implement, what project was this? Or was this a hypothetical project?
I think to start with, we were looking at hypothetically, but then when we did the case studies example, we kind of thought that's kind of the same thing. So the idea being here, we had the hypothetical question of like a testimonial. So in fact, it came from one of the proposals that we were writing. The client wants the ability to add testimonials. So someone has contacted them to give them a testimonial. They want to add it to the website. So ideally, what they wanted is to have a page of testimonials. I'm not sure why I'd want that, but they did. So here's all my testimonials, and maybe we want to group those testimonials into different groupings. I don't know what the groupings would be, but categories like these are testimonials about X projects, these are about Y projects, etc.
Yeah.
But they also want the ability to then drop a testimonial, any testimonial, onto a page or a post, when they may be talking about that particular thing. So, excuse me, historically, I think what we'd have done here, Keith, is create a post type called testimonials.
Yeah.
That may use the block editor, who knows, or it may just have some fields on for like, here's your quotes, here's your person that wrote the quote, various things like that as usual.
Yeah.
And then you would drop that post into different places, essentially. That post type might have an archive, which would display them all. You could create taxonomies and so on and do it that way. And I suddenly thought, well, we've got synced patterns, which I still prefer reusable blocks, I think, because that's what they are. Unless I've misunderstood the terminology again. I have a block. I want to use it on multiple pages. If I change it once, it changes on all the pages. So you could create a testimonial and then make it as so this testimonial could be a group block, and inside that there could be a testimonial, a block quote thing, or whatever it's called, and then you could create that as a synced pattern, a reusable block in old money, and then you could then drop that on any other page. You change it once, it would change everywhere on your page of testimonials. It would also change on any of the pages where you've put it on into. But then we're like, well, the management of those isn't particularly great, is it? Because like, where do I go to see all my testimonials?
Yeah.
There is the reusable blocks or patterns screen, but it's just a list of posts. So it's not very great because that'll be mixed in with any other patterns that I've got as well.
Yeah.
Do I go to my testimonials page? Because theoretically I can edit it anywhere and it'll change anywhere. It's just not that great. So but the question was like, what do people do when they're building block themes to fix this sort of thing? Because we were a bit unsure. That was our take on it.
I put a comment. I was watching WP Builds the other day, live stream, and they were mentioning patterns or sync patterns or something. And I just put the question up saying, how do you decide when to use a custom post type and when to use sync patterns? And I think it was Alex Staniford replied basically saying, if I know I'm going to need to filter them in some way, I'll use a case study Otherwise,
You
I'll
mean a
use
post type?
yes, I need a custom post type. Otherwise, I'll use the sync pattern. Yeah. And I thought that's pretty good. So, like, if you ever needed to use like the query loop, for example, and you want to show me them from a certain taxonomy, or show me the first 5, or show me them whatever, the most recent. If there's any way that you're going to want to filter that, then then use a custom post type. Otherwise, don't.
Yeah.
I think it also comes down to like how many of them you might have. Right, because like,
but it doesn't matter how many you've got.
But if you've got 100 testimonials, you don't want that page where you edit all of your synced patterns to just be like scrolling through hundreds of different testimonials.
But in essence, that's what your patterns could look like anyway, couldn't they? Eventually, you may end up with 50 patterns on your site, so you're going to have to scroll through.
Well, that's what I mean, but you don't want to exacerbate it with things that don't have to be patterns. Is what I'm trying to say. You know, if there's a different way to do it, like to take it to an extreme, because you're not going to reuse posts. I was going to say you don't want your posts as patterns. You know, that's a crap example, but if everything becomes a sync pattern, the other one was FAQs. That was where this like where this conversation for us maybe started. So we're thinking about FAQs, and we're like, so you can have one FAQs page, and the client was like, no, we're going to have FAQs on different pages. And you said, well, are you going to want to reuse those FAQs? So it's the same like FAQ block for like locations or jobs or whatever, like a jobs FAQ and a program FAQ and whatever else. And then so
it's the same thing, basically.
It's the same thing, yeah. Like, what's the best way to manage that? I mean, WordPress is a content management system, so how do we manage this stuff?
So Mark says continuing to use a custom post type is much easier for editors to manage. Yeah, I'd agree, because they just go create me a new testimonial, create me a new FAQ, fill in the things. They can also be using the query loop and filtered by taxonomy. So yes, they can, but there is no, correct me if I'm wrong again, I keep saying that today, but correct me if I'm wrong. There is no way of being able to say, I want to display this custom post on a page.
Yeah.
So I can use the query loop, but the query loop only allows me to say, get me 10 posts that are in this category or by this author. But the only way I can do it is to use the query loop block with a keyword search, and I'd have to type the title of the post in to get the correct post. It's not perfect, and then I could say, show me one post.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to be able to say, show me the latest 4 of these, or the ones I specifically choose.
Yeah, or I want to pick these.
You can't do that. We've done that for clients before, when we've given that option with kind of custom blocks that we've built. We say like, well, you know, set your query up over here, or just tell us the post you want to show over here. And that works really well, but the query loop block doesn't give you that. So
it doesn't give you an option to sort of select posts. Yeah,
that's a good question. So if you need to pull a card for a particular piece of content on a page with core, is that possible? Like, you know, just to bring in a bit of data from the about page, or a bit of data from this case study, or a bit of data from whatever. How's that done? I don't know.
I don't think you can do that, although I could do it with block bindings now.
Yeah.
With my newfound knowledge of how to bind something to a block. But
yeah,
that's not great, because you don't actually see the content in the back block binding. You just see like a placeholder at the moment, which is a bit, well, it's all right. But
well, the block bindings thing was interesting, just in case we don't touch on it in future episodes. So Mark was excited to show me that he'd been working with the block bindings API and got something to work. So it would show, was it a taxonomy term?
Yeah.
And you created a paragraph block variation to do it. Yeah. So really, like,
I created a paragraph block, and then I bound that to a custom binding source. And if you're not aware of what a custom binding source is, which I wasn't, it essentially allows you to create your own custom binding source. You give it a name, essentially. And when that custom binding source is found on a block, when the block is rendered, it will run your callback function to render the block, essentially. So because you're essentially you've got a PHP function, and whatever that returns will be the content of your block, you can kind of do anything. So in this instance, I was just saying, get me the terms of this particular taxonomy and then display them in this specific way. I know people are saying, well, there's already block for terms in a taxonomy. I know there is, but it didn't display them as I wanted to get rid of the links, wanted to do various different things.
Yeah.
So that was how it was done.
Yeah.
And then what I did was, because at the moment you have to edit the block in code view to set up the block bindings, you can't do that for a customer. So I created a variation of the paragraph block that had all those JSON stringy things
Is that how you done it?
already included. So when the client wants to add this block, it shows in the block inserter of the name that I've given it. I think it was client, because the taxonomy was client. And they can just say, I want to add a client. I want to add this post as client, drop it in, and they put the block where they want, and that worked really well. So that was the sort of background about it, which I thought was quite cool and got me thinking about how you could do that for other things, to do things in a custom way and use a block that would appear in the block editor, in the inserter, and the client would see it nice and easily. So that was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. And then it kind of... So I went from like a high of that. It was like, oh, that's really cool, Mark. Well done. To thinking, this has been possible in like Elementor and things like that for so long with a UI, like where I can kind of add this kind of information anywhere I want. So I can add like a title or a paragraph or something anywhere on a page and grab metadata or taxonomy data and put it there. So as this is a whole other topic, but like, as exciting as some of these innovations in full site editing and the block editor are, it feels like we're constantly just playing catch up to all the other page builders. It's not like Elementor's here and the block, because we've got the block bindings API, like we're not like, whoa, shooting past Elementor. No, we're like here. I'm using my hands. That's not great for a podcast. But yeah,
it's like Elliot says, the block binding API is a game changer. It is a game changer, but it's sort of just catching us up to the rest of the things that already allow this to happen in a way. But it is. And I think once it has a UI, yes.
Yeah, it's not even close to being implemented in a way that is
usable,
anywhere near the Elementor implementation of it.
Yeah.
That's what I just keep feeling about like the project in general. It's like, yeah, that's nice, but come on, we need more. We need the responsive controls. We need like negative margins just came in. Woohoo! But there's no responsive controls. So if I'm like pulling something to the left so that it overlaps, so that some text overlaps an image, that negative margin is still applied on the mobile view, which pulls the text off the screen. Like, we're just... I understand now what Matt said about things going too slowly. Like he wants the project to be moving faster. Initially, I was like, "Whoa, this change is too quick. It's freaking me out." Now I'm just like, "Can we just bloody get on with it and just get the things that everyone's screaming out for?" Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other rant, whole other topic for another day.
But as a user, you see that example with the negative margin. You pull something to the left like that, and then as a user, you look at it on mobile, you think, oh, that's a bit broken, isn't it? I wonder how to change that. And the answer is, you can't. Literally, you can't. You can't change it, which is disappointing as a user. You can't find a solution. I know you can do some CSS, but users can't do it. Even I can't do that at the moment. I'd have to think about what to do and probably ask you, because I haven't written CSS for donkey's years. But if that's the only solution, it's just slightly annoying, isn't it? But we're getting there. We're getting there. Slowly. Baby steps.
Oh, we're getting somewhere. Yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely in a phase of like turbulence in my WordPress journey at the minute. I'm really feeling like really unsteady and uneasy, and just like I just don't know where this is going and what I should be doing and what the best practices are, and like I feel overwhelmed and confused and frustrated. I'm just in one of those moods. Hopefully, when we start one of these next projects, we'll come up with some answers to some of this stuff and be excited again.
It says the block bindings is perfect for metadata, not a great UI yet, but that will change. And I think the plan is for that to change, and obviously it will take time for that to change. It says this is kind of why the interactivity API was also introduced. I don't quite get that. Why? And then he says, sorry, you took that off the screen, Keith.
Sorry.
It's also becoming integrated into core. Well, I presume that's the interactivity API, but not
yeah.
Sure
so I think they're using that interactivity API to build other core functionality, I think is what Elliot's saying there. So there's more. The stuff that some of the stuff that we're crying out for is coming because they now have this API, so they can do that kind of thing. But
yeah.
Don't
get me started on the interactivity API.
No.
We'll be here for a while.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
I think we'll wrap it up in a minute. I've got one thing to mention in terms of what we've been reading and watching this week. Do you have anything, Mark, that caught your eye?
Probably, but I haven't written it down. So
yeah.
I'll come to that next week.
Yeah, that's fine. So the one that I have is, people may have already seen this. It's a blog post that was written yesterday by David Hennemeyer Hansen. Apologies if I pronounced the name wrong. He is the co-founder of Rails and 37 Signals, which makes Basecamp, and Hey, which is the email app. Controversial figure for some of his views, but a super smart guy too. It was Brian Cords, actually. I saw a tweet of his saying this should be essential reading for anybody in the WordPress community. So the link is a very long link, but his blog is at world.hey.com/DHH. And you should be able to find it there, or just Google for "open source is neither a community nor a democracy," and you'll find the article. The idea behind this is basically that there's a misconception that open source means A, there's a community, and B, that it's a democracy, and neither are true, and neither should be true. So what he's basically saying is, just because you use an open source tool does not give you a seat at the table of how it is built and how it is run. He's basically saying, accept it as a gift, and use it or don't use it. Don't feel like you're entitled to a say in anything. It's the people that show up and actively contribute. I didn't really want to use the word contribute, but actively develop it, and are kind of there day after day after day, that are the ones that are doing the work, and they get to lead the project because they show up to do the work. If you're not one of those people, then he doesn't say shut up, like put up or shut up, but he basically he's kind of saying that. He's like, just kind of get on with it, use the tool or don't use the tool. But the people that put in the time and the effort to actually build the thing are the ones that get the votes, not you.
I haven't had time to read the article, but because obviously it was only just on the notes before I joined the call. Yeah. But is he saying people like us on this podcast should be saying, stop talking about these things? You don't have any right to talk about them.
No, I don't think he's saying don't talk about them. I think what he's saying is drop the entitlement and drop the idea that because you use it, you get a say. Like, you don't. You can say what you feel.
Yeah.
But nobody needs to take that in some kind of democratic sense and say, well, Mark thought this and this person thought that, and if we add them together, we get 50% of the vote. That's just not how this works.
No,
it's not a democratic process, and it shouldn't be, is what he's saying. I don't think he's saying you can't complain about things, but
to be fair,
don't feel that your opinion should be heard necessarily by the top or taken into account.
Yeah. You've no right for it to be heard, if that makes sense. But to be fair to the powers that be in WordPress, whoever they are, obviously Matt is the main person at the top. I don't think they've ever said it should be a democracy. It is a democracy, and the things that you all decide is going to happen. He's never ever said that, as far as I'm aware.
No, he doesn't say that.
No, I think, but
This
there
is
is
kind of backing Matt up, if anything. Like,
there is a sense though of that you should contribute and get involved, and you will be listened to. I do feel that people say that we want you to get involved, which therefore implies that when you get involved with opinions and feedback and ideas, that they will be listened to. Otherwise, what's the point in you doing that?
yeah, listen to, but not necessarily any action taken. You know, it's just like it's like like us as a product owner. Someone might come to us and say, "Oh, can I have this feature?" And we have every right to say no, just because that person asked for it. 10 people might ask for it. 70% of our user base might ask for it. We can still say no, we're not building that feature because we've got our reasons. And I guess it's thinking about things like WordPress more like that than this kind of perception that we have that this is some kind of like utopian democratic community project, and it isn't, and we've got to stop thinking about it like that. And then maybe if we stop thinking about it like that, we'll all be a lot less frustrated. It's a good read. It's a good read. I mean, if nothing else, if you don't agree with him, it'll just make you think. So
that's good.
Yeah, I'd definitely check it out. Let's wrap up the show there. Thank you so much for joining us. We had quite a few live watchers today on X and on YouTube. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks for saying hello in the comments. Thanks for your questions and your comments in there. It's been a good show. We will see you again next week. If you did enjoy today's show, please do leave a like. That's all it takes. That little thumbs up makes a world of difference. And if you want more of this kind of thing, please do consider subscribing to the YouTube channel, or following us on X, or following or subscribing on your favorite podcast player. We are in all those places. And hopefully see you again next week. See you soon.